I want to do a review of the Goldentyre 333 and the Goldentyre 216 Fatty. There isn't that much information on YouTube that I can find about this rear tire in particular, so I figured I would say some things about it from my experience. I've had this tire on this bike, which is by the way a 350 EXCF, for about 70 hours, I believe. I actually rode a variety of terrain on this tire across 2 states. So I started off in Washington, where this tire did pretty good. When it was new especially, it hooked up really well. It has pretty stiff sidewalls, and then it has a fairly flexible carcass. You can't really tell in here, but it is fairly soft. And so running with tubeless, even at about 8 psi, this middle area right here bends quite a lot. At 6 psi, even more so, and then at 4 psi, it almost feels like you're riding on a flat. But again, the sidewalls are really stiff, and so they do help protect the rim. And with tubeless, this tire works pretty well, even though I think Goldentyre says to run it with the bib moose. So with 70 hours, you can tell there is still a bunch of life left on the knobs here. I've had no chunking. They are rounded on the leading edge. I have not flipped the tire, which I could do. But with, I think, about 50, 60 hours in Washington and then the rest down here in Alabama, the tire has performed really well. I will say that although it's good in the wet, on the rocks, it still slips a little bit. And then due to the smaller knob sizes, it doesn't do as well in the mud, I think, as it could. There are certain situations, for example, going uphill, if you get stuck in a hole with the rock in front of the tire will not hook on the rock as much as you think it would, and so it does spin. Again, I think it's partially due to the spacing of the knobs and the size of the knobs. They're definitely more of a root and rock tire, I think, but no major complaints. I think overall, given what I paid for this tire and the amount of hours I got from it, you can't really ask for much more. Having said that, down here in Alabama, the terrain is much different than Pacific Northwest. Like I said, I know the Goldentyres have a great following in Washington. Down here, not as much, only because the terrain here has a lot more mud, a lot more slick clay. And so I think a tire with more aggressive knobs does a little bit better. So I will be replacing this guy with another rear. I'm thinking of the AT81EX, which is a sticky tire, and also the IRC V33S, which is a semi-sticky. So look to those videos. I believe I'm going to have those tires here soon, and I'm likely going to try the AT81EX first. But let's move on to the front. This is the Goldentyre 216AA Fatty. So this is the 190 version, which is thicker and taller than a standard front tire. This tire also has about 70 hours on it. You can kind of tell that the knobs are somewhat rounded, but they still have quite a lot of thickness to them. I mean, you can tell there's still life in the tire. It does have these triangular knobs on the sides, which are a little different from many tires. And it, again, it has a great following in Washington and does well on roots and rocks. I had no complaints going over that stuff. So in enduro type situations, it does pretty well. Where I have complaints about this tire is down here in Alabama, where there are a lot of ruts, hard pack ruts, as well as mud ruts, and this tire climbs out of ruts like crazy. I don't know if it's due to the design of the side knobs here or the overall size of the tire, but it just is not one to ride inside of a rut. Now, some guys will say if you raise the forks and the triple clamps to return the bike to its original geometry, it won't climb as much. I have not had luck with that. So again, in Washington, this tire has a great following and it does really well. But down here where the riding is pretty rutted and pretty muddy, it doesn't do as well. In the mud, this tire tends to stay on top of the mud instead of digging down into it. Now, you don't want to dig down too far, but especially in corners, it seems to skate over the mud rather than kind of really get a good grip inside of it. So I've had some issues with this. In general, the compound is pretty good. Even on wet clay, it grips pretty well. But again, the bike feels very unstable in ruts and not so great in mud. And so I'm also going to be changing this tire as well. Now, one thing I want to add is that a lot of people say that this tire is the same as the Shinko Fatty, and it is not. There's a lot of misinformation about that on the web. Originally, Goldentyre had Shinko make their tires, but Shinko rubber compound is not very good, and so Goldentyre had a lot of these initial 216s chunking like crazy and just having bad grip all over. So they took the manufacturing away from Shinko and they do their own tires now, and they have multiple generations of this tire actually, each newer generation being better than the previous in terms of the rubber compound. So this is I think this is the most recent generation actually that I have here. And again, wear's been amazing. So if you had a Shinko and had a chunk, or had a previous Goldentyre and had a chunk, then the newer generations will not do that because, again, much, much better rubber. I have considered running the 9090 version, which is called the Chubby, or the 8100, which is called the Razor. But from what I've read, it is actually some of these side knobs or the design of the tire that causes us to climb out of ruts. And so I decided to go with the M59 front to try instead, which supposedly have a lot better stability through mud and also a lot better ability to ride through ruts. So I'm going to be trying that next. One other thing I want to add is that this Goldentyre Fatty is a pretty lazy tire, meaning the steering is pretty vague. The 8100 version, the Razor, is a lot more sharp and crisp in steering, but this one is fairly vague. And so if you like a tire where you can feel exactly what the bike is doing, where it's going, you can point it and go, hit those specific spots in the trail, then this may not be the tire for you. It does fairly well, but like I said, there is a vague feeling due to its size and thickness. It's almost like a tractor tire. It goes over anything, but it's not as precise as it could be. So think about what you would like to do and what you would like to feel on your bike, because the 9090 version or the 8100 will be a better choice, I think, than the Fatty. To close, I want to say that I'm pretty happy with both tires, especially the amount of life I got for the price I paid. If I was still riding in Washington, I think I would probably keep them and probably replace the rear with a newer version to have, the size of the knobs back. But down here in Alabama, I think there are better tires for the job. So I will be trying those and I'll post some videos as I go along. And hopefully I'll find a combination that works better for a lot of the ruts that we ride. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope this was helpful.